Awesome. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Turner Construction Foundations of Pre-Construction webinar. If you don't mind, go ahead and log on to menti.com and use this code that you see on the screen here, just to let us know that you're here, let us know what school you go to. We'd love to see who all we're reaching with this webinar. Okay, so before we get started, we're just going to go over a couple housekeeping type items. Once again, we're asking if you can just go on to Menti, let us know that you're here. We're going to keep all the attendees on mute today and stay on mute until the end when we have a Q&A time. But you can use the chat feature throughout the presentation and send in any questions that you might have or technical difficulties that you might have. We'll try to assist with that. But again, at the end, we will have a Q&A time where you can actually raise your hand and unmute to ask a question as well.
Great. Yeah, so good morning. We're going to give a couple of introductions as to who is talking to you. So I'm Jeff Borgsmiller. I'm a project executive, pre-construction manager with Turner Construction in our Memphis office. I've been with Turner for about 4.5 years. Just to give you a real quick timeline on my career, I've been in the business for about 25 years now. Since 1995, I went to school to become a civil structural engineer and had dreams of being a bridge designer. That was what I wanted to do. And came out of school, got a master's degree in structural engineering, and did that. Designed bridges for about 5 years. Through the course of designing the bridges, worked hand in hand with the contractors that built them, and really worked with them on some of the construction methods and designing equipment that helped them build the bridges themselves. You can see in that picture there in the center. And so really got the bug for wanting to work as a contractor and built bridges for a couple of years before I moved into the construction building management side of the business. So I've been doing that for about 20 years now. Absolutely love it. It tickles the analytical side of my brain as an engineer, but also allows me to form relationships with teams of all kinds of people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. Which has enabled me to really get a lot of fulfillment out of working on the contractor side. So welcome. I appreciate you all being here. When I'm not working, I'm usually running in the woods, hiking with my family, climbing mountains, which is tough to do from Memphis, but you just got to travel a little bit to do that.
Hi everyone, I am Maddie Duran. I'm an estimator in our Huntsville office. I graduated from the University of Alabama with a degree in civil engineering in December of 2017. And then I started with Turner February of 2018, and I've been in the pre-construction department ever since. Since starting at Turner, I've had the opportunity to work with several big name clients, such as Blue Origin, Boeing, the FBI, and the Arnold Air Force Base. Here in Huntsville, we see a lot of government projects, so that is the majority of what I've worked on. But we do occasionally get some pretty fun commercial projects, like you can see on this slide. This is the new Trash Pandas baseball stadium in Madison, Alabama, and I got to help some on that project. It was pretty neat. During my time at school, I was able to get a co-op with another general contractor for 3 semesters. And with this co-op, I gained such valuable experience learning about this industry, and it really helped me with starting my career here at Turner. I just wanted to stress just how important it is to get a co-op or get an internship if you can. I know it can be hard to work into your schedule, but if you can make it happen, it is just so valuable. I had no idea that I even wanted to do construction when I was in school before I started my co-op, and it really opened my eyes to what this industry is. It's a very exciting industry. No 2 days are the same, and you really get to help contribute to your city. You're literally building your city, and it is just such a neat experience to have. And getting a co-op, you just learn so much. You really get to start your career kind of just one step ahead of where you would have been without it. So just really recommend it if you can.
Yeah, great. So we're going to talk to you obviously about what we do during the pre-construction portion of the construction project. But to step back for a second, just wanted to give you an idea of the overall construction project life cycle. The life cycle of a job is basically from the very inkling of the conception of the job. So a client, an owner, somebody with some money that has an idea that wants to build a building, that's the conceptual stage of the job. And that's the very beginning of the life cycle of a construction project. The end of the life cycle is when we hand them the keys to the project and they take ownership of it. And so that life cycle, the pre-construction phase of the life cycle obviously happens towards the beginning of that cycle, but sometimes can last 6 months, 3 months, sometimes can last 2 or 3 years, frankly. The pre-construction phase of the life cycle typically constitutes about 40 to 60% of the overall time frame of what it takes to develop a project. So what we're talking about today is all of the work and planning and effort that goes involved in making sure that the project is set up to succeed before you ever stick a shovel in the ground.
Yeah, so this life cycle really applies to the majority of projects that Turner as a whole works on. We like to get involved early on if we can, but I wanted to talk to one different type of projects that we actually get to see a lot here in Huntsville, and that is a hard bid project. So this is where we are introduced to the project after all the design and everything has been completed. So we're handed a full set of drawings and specs that's ready to go, ready to be built, and we then price that out, turn in a number to the owner, and typically we're in competition against other general contractors like ourselves to win that job. And so with these projects, it's basically low dollar gets the work. So it's a different world, but overall we still run through the same services. It's just more condensed down, and there's just a few nuances that are different. And then also timeline wise with a hard bid project, sometimes we have just a few weeks to get our number pulled in. Typically we don't see anything longer than a month or two to get our hard bid projects completed. Okay, so we can take that project life cycle that we just talked about and kind of condense it down into 4 main services. That's kind of our day-to-day. And these are estimating and pricing, scheduling, constructability, and logistics. So our day-to-day can be made up of working in just one of these services or even all of these services. You never know what you're going to get when you walk through the door in this industry. And so we're going to spend the next few slides going more in detail about these services. So the first one we're going to talk about is estimating and pricing. And these might sound similar or even the same thing, but they're actually very different in our world. So we'll start with estimating. As an intern or a new hire here at Turner, one thing that you can expect is that you're going to get very familiar with drawings and specifications and learning all the ins and outs of a project. And one of the main things we do to accomplish this is to do takeoff. So we'll have an example to start. So imagine that you're planning like a party and you have to figure out how much you need to buy, and how much of each item you need to buy, and then you want to know how much it's all going to cost. Buildings are really no different than that. So we have to go through the drawings and figure out how much of each trade and material that there's going to be in order to build that project, from the foundation to the roof and everything in between. We have to quantify all of it. So on the screen, you can see an example of some takeoff. So what you're looking at here is a plan view. And a plan view, if you're not familiar, is a bird's eye view looking down on the building. You're just to see like what all rooms are encompassing this space. And so we see a lot of different colors here. We use this software called CostX, and it helps to quantify these different materials. So here we're quantifying flooring. So every color represents a different type of flooring, and it's giving us a total square footage of that flooring. So for example, you see the green, that's carpet tile. So our program is telling us that there is 8,739 square feet of carpet tile. So then what we do is we look back on past projects, historical data to come up with how much that carpet is going to take to install. And that's how we come up with this $4.25 number. Multiplying the two, you get your total for carpet as about $37,000. Continuing this same idea through all the other types, we get our total for flooring as $98,000 on this particular project. And so if you take the same concept and you apply it to all the trades in a project, you create your full estimate, your total cost for building this particular job. And so that's a lot of what I do day to day is do this takeoff, price it, and get that final price to the owner. But this alone, it's not enough. So that kind of takes us into our next step, which is pricing the job out. So one thing that a lot of people might not realize is that about 85% of the cost of a Turner project is made up of work that's not actually performed by Turner. So we work with different subcontractors to bring our projects to a successful completion, to price the job entirely. So we have to bring subcontractors in to also review the plans and tell us how much their portion of it is going to cost. And that's pricing the job. So we work to get a good grasp on the scope through takeoff and through building our estimate. And that allows us to then call the subcontractors and talk through it all with them. Because it's important to us that they are understanding the job and that we are understanding the job. We can kind of combine our expertise and make sure that it is going to be fully covered at the end of the day. So it's really important here at Turner to have good relationships with our subcontractors. It's something we really pride ourselves in, because when you have a good team that likes to work together, that's when you have a successful project. And so we really rely on our subcontractors a lot, and developing those good relationships helps us in so many ways, especially for like a hard bid project. A lot of times we have subcontractors give us a better number because they like to work with us, and then that wins us work. And so it's very, very important. We use a program here called Building Connected, and that helps us keep our subcontractor list for the projects all organized. You can see a screenshot of it here on the screen for this particular mechanical package. So it visually shows us how many people have seen the invitation, how many people are going to give us a price, how many aren't, and how many aren't sure yet. So from this particular screenshot, we're doing pretty good. We've got 11 bidders, which is great, but we still have a little bit of work to do because we have 7 that don't know yet what they want to do. And we would love to get a number from them, because the more we get, it allows us to have more options in picking a better number, picking a better subcontractor, frankly. And so as a intern, a co-op, or even a new hire starting out here at Turner, this is something that you'll get to do a lot of. We make a lot of phone calls. We work on those relationships a lot with phone calls, and then analyzing each package to see how it's doing, and then communicating that back to our team to say, hey, we need to do more work here, or this one's looking good. So this is the pricing side of it. So once we get everyone's numbers in, we can really put our full price together, our full estimate, knowing that this is what we could build that job for. So before we move on, I see one question that just came in. It says, how many bidders do you guys typically have per trade? So we like to get 3. You never want, just one number because it's hard to judge whether or not that's accurate, really. And then 2 numbers, you might have one that's really high and one that's really low. And then how will you really decide who's right, I guess? So getting that 3rd number can help us figure out, okay, maybe the higher number is more correct or the low number is more correct. And so we kind of work that out. But really, the more bidders, the better, I would say. If you agree with that, Jeff.
Yeah, I think to a limit. Yeah, absolutely. I think you don't want to have so many bidders that you just have somebody that is going to make a mistake and have their number on the street that maybe one of our competitors is going to use. That is a bad number. That's a mistake, but that's kind of an anomaly. By and large, 3 to 5, 3 to 6 numbers is what we would typically like to see or be comfortable with from a procurement standpoint.
Right.
So just to circle around on that, to go back to Maddie, to your analogy about going to the store or planning for a party, right?
Yeah.
When we're estimating, that's when we're sitting at home saying, okay, I need 12 6-packs, I need 4 bottles of wine and 15 bags of chips. And you're guessing at how much those are going to cost. That's when you put your estimate together. That's when you figure out how much money you need to pull out of the bank or how much money you're going to be pulling out of your ATM to go shopping. The pricing piece of it, the piece where we go to the market and get the numbers, that's the equivalent of actually going to the store, going to the liquor store, going to the grocery store, and shopping around, purchasing those products, and then you know what you've actually got. So when we're estimating, we're effectively forecasting the cost of something, which can be challenging. And a lot of what we do is we'll get involved on projects very, very early on at the very, very conceptual stage of the job, like I'd mentioned before. And that's well before we actually go price it on the market. But that's where a client will say, okay, I've got this sketch on the napkin here. Can you tell me how much this thing is going to cost? And so, of course, there's a ton of questions that we need to ask. There's a ton of assumptions that we need to make, but we need to be able to provide clients a good forecast, a very prudent, accurate, reliable forecast of what that building is going to cost them. And so a lot of that in the early conceptual stage takes a lot of imagination. It takes a lot of visualization, being able to take this napkin sketch and really literally build it in your mind, understand how many cubic yards of concrete you're going to have, how many sticks of steel you're going to have, how many square feet of carpet you're going to have, et cetera, so that you can really dissect that building in a way well before it's shown on paper, in a way that will allow you to really give a detailed, accurate prediction of what that thing might cost. And that's a challenge. That's more of an art, frankly, than a science, I'd say. It takes a lot of experience and takes a lot of imagination, and it takes a good engineering mind to be able to do that visualization and understand what it'll cost. As the project continues to be designed and goes from the concept stage to the schematic stage, so you start seeing more and more drawings show up, there's a lot of questions that come about at each stage of the design. For instance, the design team may say, hey, we can make this a concrete structure or we can make it a steel structure. Turner, what is the most cost effective? What is the best solution for the project? So we'll typically do a study of the cost, the schedule, the lead times, the market. Sometimes in some markets, there's less concrete builders than there are steel erectors. So you can typically get a better price and a better participation with a steel structure than you can a concrete structure. So there's a lot of factors and a lot of criteria that go into a study like that, but it's important that we provide data to the client so that they are able to make an informed decision on which system to use for their project. And we'll do that with every type of system on the job: HVAC systems, electrical systems, building envelope systems, things like that. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of imagination and creativity associated with it, but also you're crunching some numbers and doing some takeoff and running some math. So it really, like I said, it really hits on two sides of the brain there, which makes life interesting sometimes. Scheduling, yeah. So we just talked about estimating and pricing, and that's one of the components that we do during pre-construction phase. But scheduling is another substantial component of our services. There typically are two questions that a client will ask at the early stages of the design. Hey, how much is this going to cost me, and how long is it going to take you to build it? And so we'd have to do a detailed schedule on that to determine what it's going to take and to build it. So we'll again, very similar to putting together an estimate, we will visualize and dissect each component of the job, and each piece of the project has labor and time durations associated with it that go into a schedule. And we'll build a detailed schedule, typically in a scheduling program like Microsoft Project or Primavera P6, to develop a detailed line item Gantt chart schedule complete with all of the activities that it's going to take to build a job, lined up with a predecessor-successor relationship, because certain things need to be completed before other activities can start. We'll analyze the type of year so we can look at weather patterns and see what that's going to do to impact the schedule. And most importantly, when the design gets far enough along and our procurement process gets far enough along towards the end of the pre-construction phase of the job, we'll pull in all of our subcontractors into a meeting, like you see in the bottom left there, and really sit down and do what we call a pull plan. I won't get into details of that, but it's where we literally plaster a bunch of sticky notes on the wall to determine true successor predecessor relationships, really get subcontractors buy-in on time durations, and really fine tune and tweak that schedule and get everybody's buy-in on what it's going to take to build that job so that we can go perform lights out and get the thing done.
Yeah, it is so important. And I wanted to touch on how scheduling plays into a hard bid project, because it is a little bit different for us. Like I said, usually for hard bid, we do not have a lot of time. But it is still very important to have an understanding of how long a job is going to take. So we try to get our project team involved to come up with a rough schedule. So we might take major items like the foundation and the structure and then the interiors, and we put rough guesses to how long they're going to take. And sometimes we do reach out to our subcontractors as well, ask them for rough durations, and find out if any materials are going to take extra long to get to the job site or not. And this can help us to build a rough outline schedule as well. With a hard bid, we are trying to get low dollar. And so having a rough schedule can actually help us get to low dollar. If we realize that we can do it in less time, that can sometimes save money. And so it's important that we have those discussions with our team to give us the best chance of winning. And then another aspect of scheduling that we see is sometimes an owner for a hard bid will tell us how much time we're allowed to have for a project. So a lot of times we see 365 days, 1 year we want our building complete. And when we're given a full plan set for the job, we need to make sure that that's possible. And if it's not going to be possible, we need to ask a question, try to get to the bottom of what we can do. So putting up together a rough schedule can give us a better idea of yes, that year duration is reasonable or not. And so this is kind of where our next service that we're going to talk about comes into play is feasibility. Can we even get this done?
Yeah, so constructability and feasibility, right? Is it buildable? That's a big question that we're asked. And believe it or not, a lot of times architects and engineers will actually put stuff on paper that doesn't make sense, that is not buildable. It is buildable, but it's going to leak, right? So if you've got a flashing detail, like what you see in the upper left-hand corner there of a window, right? And making sure that the flashing details are such that it's A, buildable, and B, isn't going to leak. is very critical. So we, in the pre-construction phase of the job, will put a builder's eye on all of the details of the job and study it and make sure that we're providing our input from a construction standpoint on ways to make it more buildable, maybe less costly, but also ultimately end up making it a building with the most integrity as possible. We'll do a lot of three-dimensional studies as well. On the bottom left, you'll see a 3D building information model, so that a lot of what we do, we've got folks that literally focus solely on three-dimensional modeling, and they'll study all of the mechanical and electrical and fire protection systems that go up above the ceilings. And sometimes you got to put 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, if you know what I mean. And so it's very critical that we study that virtually in 3 dimensions and build it virtually in 3 dimensions, so that we can make sure that the ductwork is going in the right spot, the conduit for the electrical is going in the right spot, so that you don't have a conflict in the field when you actually do go build it.
So to kind of go off of that and give you a real world example of how this plays into our day to day, I wanted to talk about a project that we're working on right now. It is a parking garage build in downtown Huntsville. So the scope of this was that there was an existing garage already on this space, and they wanted half of it torn down so a new 5-story garage could be built in its place. But the catch was that the other half that we weren't demolishing had to remain operational during the whole course of the project. And so this is tricky. You know, you are literally tearing down half of a structure and have to make sure that the other half is not going to go with it. So we had to bring in structural engineers to come out and look at the existing garage, make sure that it was going to stay if we took half of it away, and make sure that, you know, we would be safe in the process, and also that the people using this other half would be safe as well, because that is so important. So that's kind of real world constructability. You know, we did that analysis and they said, yes, this is going to work fine. This is what you need to do. These are the safety measures you need to put into place, you know, shoring up the sides where you're taking the other half away, and then it should work great. So that's the engineering behind, you know, constructability. We realized, okay, we're good to go. We can proceed with this project. And then to complicate this project even further was just the location itself. You know, one side we've got this existing garage, people using it every day. The other side of the road, we've got a narrow, busy street with no shoulder, button right up against to our project site. And then to the north there in the picture, you can see we've got a public park that has loads of events happening all the time, all week long, on the weekends. And so we have a lot going on, and this is where we have to put together a plan. You know, how are we going to operate this site? How are we going to keep our people safe? How are we going to keep the public safe? And this really takes us into our last service that we're going to talk about, which is site logistics.
Right. So constructability, feasibility, and site logistics really go quite often hand in hand, just like Maddie said. So this is the last thing we're going to talk to you about today, but site logistics and phasing, those are studies that we need to do during the pre-construction phase of the project as well, so that we can make sure that we have got a very established plan on where all of our construction activity is going to go in relation to the surrounding non-construction areas. So quite often with projects, you're building onto existing facilities like Maddie just described, or you're building a 17-story hotel right in the midst of a downtown urban area, like what we're showing here. So this is a real life site logistics phasing plan that we're establishing right now as we speak on a project that's currently in the pre-construction phase here in Memphis. This is a 17-story hotel project going down on Main Street in Memphis. So any of you listeners out there who are from Memphis will probably know what I'm talking about, but there's Main Street on the bottom of the screen, there's 2nd Street on the top of the screen, and to the left of the site is 2 active buildings, and to the right of our site in this drawing are 3 active buildings. So it's a very landlocked site, and we have to go build a 2-story underground parking garage and a 17-story tower on top of it, and we got to find a way to get materials in and out. and we got to find a way to keep us out of the way of the public and keep them active so that we're not shutting things down and dismantling things. So not to get too specific on this, but that's basically what we're doing here. This project is involving the partial demolition of an old police station on the top of the, let me actually get my little mouse on there. I don't know if you guys can see the mouse or not, but there's an old police station here. We have to demolish a portion of that. And then there's an underground 2-story parking garage that's in existence that needs to be demolished as well. And then we are able to dig a 2-story deep hole for our building footprint, which will be a 2-story deep parking garage. And out of that will come the tower that you see over on the upper left-hand portion of the job. So the L-shaped tower is in blue on this logistics plan. And so what we have to find out is, okay, we need a tower crane. We need a material hoist that is going to lift and bring all of the materials and personnel up the building as it gets built. Where do we need to put those in the most effective way so that we can bring in materials to the material hoist and get trucks in and out of the site? So actually our logistics plan here is developed in a way that we're actually going to be using Main Street as our main in and out for the project with truck delivery traffic to get the materials to and from the site. We also have to be careful with active buildings. We have to provide access for them to have emergency egress. So in case they have a fire event or some sort of emergency event in that building, our construction activity is not impeding their safety. So we work this out all during the pre-construction phase, and it's a very iterative process with the city of Memphis and all the building occupants surrounding this project site to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and we're all in line and aligned with where we're going to be, and we've got everybody's buy-in on that. So it's been a lot of fun. It's probably one of the more fun logistics plans I've ever had to work on. But yeah, and we're excited to get that project going and go push this through. So that kind of takes you through the gamut of pre-construction phase services that we do. Like I said before, it really tickles the analytical side. So if you like to run analytics, if you like to crunch numbers, if you like math, if you like to draw, if you like to visualize things, you'd really do well in a pre-construction phase, working in the pre-construction phase of a construction project. That's it for me. Maddie, you want to close us out here?
Yeah. So we kind of touched on a lot. If anyone has any questions, we wanted to just take a second and open up the floor. You can send your questions in the chat. You can come off of mute and speak your question if you would like to do that as well. And yeah, so we'll just take a second, open up the floor, and then we'll close this out.
I think we answered every possible question that anybody could ever have.
Yeah, we just nailed it, I guess.
One thing, one question I would typically have, and I'm going back, guys. I've been a 25-year career, right? So that there's a little bit of gray in this beard, I realize, but I can still remember back to being in high school, being in college, not knowing what the heck I was going to do, but knowing that, I was pretty good at math. I enjoyed doing math, and I really liked building stuff. I loved to build airplane models, car models, Legos, things like that as a kid. So I was told, hey man, you ought to go into engineering. And I didn't know what to expect with that. But that is something that yielded and really morphed into me becoming a design engineer for a few years and then ultimately getting into construction. And it, like I said, it hits on both sides of my brain in a way that keeps me happy. And I enjoy the relationship side of the business on the construction side. So a question that may come of that is, hey, how did you know you wanted to become work in the construction business? I sort of answered that question, but Maddie, I don't know if you want to answer that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that I really can say that I didn't know starting out. I think that during my time at school, there was a lot of focus on going into strict civil engineering type jobs. And I did have interest in it. I'll say that I wasn't uninterested in that. But it was when I got my co-op and I was introduced to the world of construction, that I really felt like this was it for me. This was my niche. You know, growing up, I was the kid. I loved to build. I loved the block toys. I just thought it was really interesting. And when I got shown this world of construction, I was like, wow, this is it. This is the real world application of that. And just very interested in learning more. And I feel like every day I learn so much being here. And I like the feeling of driving around town, you know, and being able to point out buildings that I helped with. And you're really shaping the skyline of your own city. And it's very rewarding work. I just wouldn't change a thing. I love where I'm at with this company and with this industry. It's just great. I just can't recommend it enough, really.
So we did have one question that showed up on the Q&A, and that is, how much does Turner do in research and development, new materials, techniques, et cetera? I'll take a stab at that, Maddie. If you can want to dovetail into what I'm fixing to say, you're welcome to. But that's a very good question, actually, because the construction industry tends to be, I'm going to say, old-fashioned, right? But Turner is very involved in lean construction, and lean is a bit of a catchphrase that has come about over the past 10 years, really. But it's not so much new materials, but techniques, definitely techniques. We are finding ways to build products, sometimes prefabricate sections of the building in a warehouse, ship it to the site and lift it and put it in place, entire rooms, entire bathrooms. For instance, on hotels where you've got a lot of repetition and you're building the same bathroom unit 500 times over, you'll go in, maybe set up an assembly line in a warehouse with our tradespeople in there working, building in a controlled environment outside of the weather, in a heated and cooled environment that is much more conducive to productivity, frankly, and getting them shipped to the site and brought in. So we're finding newer ways to prefabricate and work in a lean way that is fast tracking a lot of our schedules and making things safer and enabling workers to work in a different way as opposed to being up on ladders and in unsafe spaces. So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I think I can answer that as well. So one thing that we saw recently here in Huntsville, and I would say a lot of, us getting introduced to new materials and techniques can come through our subcontractors as well. We have a lot of people reach out to us, wanting to come in and talk to us about something that they found they want to try out on one of our projects. So recently we had an office building that we were pricing out, and one of our concrete subcontractors reached out and said, hey, we have this material, it's fiber reinforcing versus traditional rebar reinforcing. We had heard of it a little bit before, but hadn't really gotten a chance to try it much on the jobs. And so what that is instead of having the traditional rebar mats going into the slab, you actually mix these fibers into your concrete mix. And then it's all poured, and those fibers is what gives the concrete its strength. And our subcontractor was telling us, this is going to save you money. This is going to save you time. We're going to be able to do less pours this way. So really it worked out as a better option than what the engineer had planned out in the drawings. And so we took it to the owner and said, hey, this is what we want to propose to you guys. What do you think? And they loved it. It was great. So that's kind of a new thing that then we got to try on the job and see how it was working out. So we do see things like this occasionally, and it's great.
Yeah, so we're not really on the front end of R&D for new materials. But we are on the receiving end. We've got suppliers of concrete products, building envelope products, glass products, all kinds of things that are showing up new in the market. And so we're kind of the testers, if you will. We're the first guys to look at it and analyze it in our pre-construction phase and maybe build some mock-ups of it so that we can see what it looks like and how it performs. But we don't have engineers actually doing the R&D development on products. We hire folks that provide products that have R&D folks working for them. There's another question here, and it's a really good question. Does Turner perform life cost analysis on lean projects during the pre-construction phase? Yes, we do. That's a very good question. And so there's a lot of times where I mentioned earlier when I showed the concrete versus the steel structure, when we're doing cost analysis of different systems on a project, we have to do what's called a life cycle cost analysis on certain systems. So that immediately comes to mind are mechanical systems. Quite often there are different types of mechanical systems that you can put into buildings. Some are much cheaper on the front end. First cost, the construction cost is the least costly, but they use the most energy. The electric bills for that building over the years are going to be a lot higher than they would be for a different type of mechanical system that might be more expensive on the front end. And so what we typically get involved in is we'll do a first cost analysis, which tells them which system is cheapest on day one, but we'll also run some analysis on what their utility bills will be with that system over the life cycle of that building, so that they can determine what the time period for payoff on a more expensive mechanical system would be through cheaper utility bills in managing that building. And that's very, very beneficial to clients who will be owning that building for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So yes, we do that during the pre-construction phase, and we do it on lean projects as well. We do it on all of our projects, on the projects. I hope that answered. Maddie, I don't know if you have a tag onto that or not, but that's what I would.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. That I don't think I have anything to add. That was great.
So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, so it looks like we have another one here. Do pre-construction and estimating staff get opportunities to go out to job sites, or is most of your work typically done in the office? So we do get opportunities. It's just depends kind of on how often it happens. I know that me personally, I get the opportunity to go on a lot of site walks. Typically when we have a new job coming up, there'll be a day that everyone gets to go out and see the existing site. So I get to do that a lot. And then after we finish a project, if we're successful on it, then, you know, it goes out to the field, and then because we worked on it, we always want to go see what's going on. And our project teams are really great about getting us out there to see the work in progress. And it's really cool to see from paper to real life. And so we do get that chance very often, I would say, to go out and visit projects that we worked on.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I would say that the bulk of what we do in pre-construction is office focused. You know, I think we all probably spend well over 60% of our time in the office. When we do travel, we're traveling to meetings with clients, we're traveling to meetings with architects, which is also indoors. But once the project actually gets going and is starting to be built, typically Maddie and I are working on a different slaying a different dragon, as I would say, working on a pre-con of another project that has yet to get started. But it's very critical that our pre-construction folks do get back out into the field, walk and see what it is that they studied and analyzed for months on end last year, so that they can see it going up, because there's a feedback loop that comes out of that. There's things that we did wrong. There's things that we didn't analyze correctly. There's things that we did really, really well as well. And so it's important that we constantly are PDCA, plan, do, check, and adjust. We're constantly looking at what we do and fixing it and making it better. And so we have to get out in the field to really see the results of what it is that we prepared.
Yeah.
How does Turner promote lean projects with most owners opting for more traditional buildings? That is a good question too, man. You guys are loaded with good questions. Maddie, you want to take that, or you want me to take that?
I'll let you go ahead and take that one. All
right. So that's an interesting question. Quite often, most of our clients, I don't want to say they don't care, but I can't think of a better way of saying it. For the most part, our clients don't care actually how we go about building their building. If we go prefabricate a section of their building and ship it to the site and bring it up, and if they say, hey man, if you can do that, that's great. I don't care. I'm not going to stop you. But they're not necessarily going to promote it either. Some clients are that way. We have some very, very sophisticated and involved clients that would really have a say-so in that. So how do we promote it? Frankly, if it doesn't save them money, usually if it doesn't save them money, we typically won't even bring it up. We typically won't even go that route. If the whole spirit of lean is that, hey, it's safer, it's faster, and it's less expensive. If it's not, and the client kind of cares if we're working, if it's safe, and they kind of definitely care if it's faster, but they usually predominantly care if it's less expensive. So we're usually focused in on products and techniques that are going to save them money or build it faster. And they're all over that, man. They're like, hey, yeah, you can get this done faster and cheaper. Do it. So it's not hard to convince them or promote them once we show them some data.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say it seems to me like a lot of clients, if they want a lean project, they know that kind of going into it. But it can help if we do some research on a client and know that that's something that their company as a whole is passionate about. And a lot of jobs we actually have to go and present our proposal to do their job to them. And so that's when it's really important. And we know that matters to them, then we're going to make sure that we bring that up and promote that, you know, as Turner, we can do that. We want to do that. And then that can make a huge difference if our proposal is being judged to them, then that might stick out. So we make sure that we do our research, do our homework, you know.
That's a really good point. We haven't, and I know we're bumping up on 11:45 here, but we haven't even talked about that, Maddie, is the whole get work side of our business. So I'll just hit on that for a brief second. When you think of a construction business, there's really two things that we do. We get work and we go build it, right? We get work and we build it. So there's a get work portion of our business, and there's a do work portion of our business. Operations, pre-construction is doing work, but getting work, sales, bringing in the clients and convincing them that we're the contractor that they need to hire to go build them their building. A lot of times those innovative lean techniques are very, very much the out of the box thinking that a client would like to see from their partner, their contracting partner, that will enable them to pick us, that convinces them that we're the guys to go build them their job. That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we are about at our time, and I don't see any other questions, so we will wrap it up. I just wanted to thank everyone that joined today. It was great getting to talk about what we do. Really appreciate you all joining. We are looking for interns and co-ops, you know, and so we encourage you to go online and apply if you're interested. You can go to turnerconstruction.com, send in your application. And then also we are attending several upcoming virtual career fairs. So check with your school and see if we are going to be there, and we'd love for you to schedule a time to come and talk to us. And then also I just wanted to throw out there that we're on social media with our Memphis, Nashville, and Huntsville offices. We are Turner Mid-South on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So it's a good way to keep up with what we're doing in these offices and just stay in touch. So appreciate everyone joining again, and we're going to call it a day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.